Welcome to Control in the Zone. This is episode number 1 with your host, Danny Healey, and myself, Kyle Wilson. What's up, Heels?
Not much. Excited to get going, K-Dub. We got a lot to get to, and excited to get these things rolling.
Absolutely. So we're starting a podcast, obviously. And what is the reason behind starting this podcast? I think with all of this stuff that's going on right now and the COVID-19 virus, it's allowing Danny and I to get together, have some more conversations. And we wanted to be able to record some of the great conversations we have. More importantly, we wanted to be able to give back to the game of baseball during these times and throughout. This is something that we had wanted to do for the last couple of years and has been on the back of my mind. And we're now, because of our time, allowed to do this. So why a podcast? I think having the ability to give back to the game of baseball is the forefront. We'll be able to help our communication skills and really continue to learn from others that are doing this at such a high level. So we're super excited about it. I cannot wait to have learning happen in real time through this podcast, and hopefully you guys will be with us along our journey.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm super excited about this platform. I think, like K-Dub said, improving communication skills. I'm more of a writer than a talker, so I think that this is a great platform for me to grow in that aspect, but also just to give back to the game we all love. But we'll get into our backgrounds a little bit here, but it wasn't always roses for my career. I'm sure Kyle would say the same. But with those kind of tribulations comes a lot of experience and knowledge, and we want to help the next generation that are playing the game we love.
Absolutely. So I think it's important to real briefly just explain our backgrounds and what this game has taught us and kind of our quick Cliff Note version of our experience through this game. So Heels, you want to start us off about your baseball background and what you're currently doing now?
Yeah, pretty brief story career-wise. So grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I played baseball at Cooper City High School. Had a lot of success more so in the showcase circuit than in high school ball because I got 2 elbow surgeries, one my junior year of high school, and then one right after my senior year ended. So before I went to college. So I committed to University of Florida the summer between my junior and senior year. Signed my letter of intent in November. And when I found out I needed my second elbow surgery, and I talked to the staff at Florida, they gave me a full medical release. Luckily, one of my roommate actually the next year at NC State, his dad was the pitching coach for my travel organization, the All-American Prospects. And Chris Schaefer was at Florida before Sully got there and also got the boot. So he ended up transferring to NC State, and Coach Schaefer did a lot for me, was talking to the staff at NC State behind the scenes, got me to NC State, signed there, played there for 4 years, took a little victory lap to get my degree in my 5th year, but was lucky to play with some really good players, including Kyle my freshman year. And then the young Bucks came in, Carlos Rodon, Trey Turner, Brett Austin, one of our future guests, came in my junior year, and we were fortunate enough to break a 45-year curse and go to Omaha my senior year, and start working some camps at State. And Kyle would run those camps, and he asked me to help out with some camps and clinics and stuff like that at TPA, and I've been at TPA ever since. So the last 6+ years now.
Yeah, it's been about 6 years, and it's been a great run so far, and we've got a lot of work to do. So my baseball background, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, went to a couple junior colleges, one being in Hillsboro, Texas. Was fortunate enough to get drafted out of that junior college in the 31st round by the Chicago Cubs. Ended up turning that down, went to NC State for 2 years. Had an opportunity to meet and establish some really, really good friendships that drew me back to the Raleigh area after I got done playing baseball, but was drafted after my senior year by the San Francisco Giants in the 24th round. Ran into a little bit of unexpected injury and outcomes, and I actually failed my physical and wasn't able to live out my dream of playing professional baseball. So that got me into coaching, started a facility in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and recently progressed into becoming a coach with the Seattle Mariners organization. That was in 2019. And then this year I have moved on to be the AAA hitting coach for the Tampa Bay Rays here in Durham, North Carolina. So super blessed with the way my career path is going, but continuing to strive and look for more information and eager to learn. And I think I will always be a lifelong learner through this whole process. And I'm excited to get rolling with the podcast.
So just to be clear, since we're about to get into some morals, your failed physical was not for any performance enhancers?
Yes, not for any performance enhancers. I actually had a stress fracture in my pelvis, and they did an MRI, and they found that I had 2 herniated discs in my back. So it was one of those things that, I cried like a baby. Obviously, my dreams were crushed, but it forced me to think about what I have to do the rest of my life and what I want to do the rest of my life. And I think as athletes, we identify ourselves as us as players. And a lot of people who play college baseball or have the ability or are fortunate enough to move on to professional baseball, if we don't achieve our dreams and the game tells us that we can no longer play anymore, we kind of are lost in what we want to do. And we really, really struggle and have a hard time because we identify ourselves as playing. So it was unfortunate, but I'm blessed that it did happen, because then I had the time to get into coaching, and found that I really find a lot more passion in coaching and helping others as opposed to, playing myself. So I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. I mean, injuries, I think we were talking about this last week. I think if you play any sport you love long enough, injuries are going to happen, but it's what you learn from more so the rehab process that we could take away as coaches, the attack today, one day at a time mindset, which is a lot easier to say than do when you're looking at a year-long rehab process. But some of those experiences, I think, definitely helped shape me into the coach and person I am today, and I'm sure you'd feel the same way.
Absolutely. So when we talk about coaching, Danny and I thought it would be important to dive into 5 things that we feel go into becoming an effective coach. And we didn't want to really dive into a lot of the intricacies of actual baseball, but really more so what characteristics it takes that we feel in our short coaching careers will help you guys as listeners, and even all the way from the youth level to the professional level, become better coaches. And those 5 things are: 1, establish your why; 2, perspective; 3, patience; 4, trust; and 5, communication. So I want to go into the first one, and I think it'd be a lot better for both of us to talk about why we do what we do. But I think it's important as a coach to establish your foundation and try to really reflect and look deeper into why you chose this coaching profession. So Danny, if you want to go ahead and share with us your why in terms of why you do what you do.
Yeah, well, I think first off, like as we grow as people, our why may kind of gradually shift as well. So originally, like Kyle was referring to earlier, when you get done playing, you're never ready for it, and you don't know what to do with yourself, with your time, kind of like Kyle said, I thought I was going to play Major League Baseball. It wasn't in the cards, like it isn't for 99.9% of young baseball players. But I viewed myself as a failure at that point. But luckily, perspective changes throughout the years. But so originally it was kind of to fill a time void. But even before I got done playing, dealing with arm injuries and stuff like that, and watching way too many games on the sidelines, I think just anything in my power that I could do to prevent as many guys having to go through those seasons missed due to arm injuries, stuff like that. I originally wanted to get into physical therapy because I basically could run someone through a shoulder, elbow, wrist, anything, any upper body extremity rehab I feel like I could do. So, which I can't, I am not certified, but yeah, I think just to really work to find a system, be a resource and an outlet for people, young pitchers specifically, to reach out to find the best programming, to make sure you train smarter, not just always train harder, but like I thought Beachbody workouts were the way to go, but train smarter. But beyond that, it's just the game of baseball has been my whole life, and it would be so selfish for me to not want to give it back, pay it forward to the next generation of baseball players that are coming up. So combination of those things, but just like the reward of seeing players get better. If you have anything to do with that process, there's nothing better. So what about you?
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I think, when I first started coaching, I did want to give back because I thought the game and knew the game had taught me so much about how to handle adversity, how to be a better teammate, how to deal with, just become an effective communicator. And that was my first one. I wanted to give back to the game that had given me so much. But then it kind of shifted to, I really find joy and passion in helping others achieve their goals. And there's nothing better than spending some time with players and grinding out the whole development process and them achieving their dreams. And it could be as simple as, you want to hit a home run or a double, or you've struggled, for the last 20 at bats and you haven't seemed to scrape out a hit, and that smile on your face when you actually get a hit and that you've had maybe, even 1% to do with that is so gratifying and is worth everything. So I think at the end of the day, it's just really about developing young men and, being able to be that voice for them to vent to and continue to help them develop. And I think it may switch, but I doubt it. I'm pretty rooted in, seeing the players develop and being a servant leader towards them. And I find a lot of joy in that. And I really feel that, that's how you become an effective coach. Not that I am, I've got a long way to go, but I know if I'm rooted in my why of helping other people, I'm going to be in a good spot. So I think it's really, really important to establish your why as a coach, just because if you don't, I feel like your players will be able to see kind of right through you if you're all about yourself and you're not a servant leader. The second thing is perspective. And by definition, perspective is a particular attitude towards or a way of regarding something. So basically, it's just a point of view. And that's the technical term. But we all go into certain situations and we draw on our own perspective. And in these situations, we have what we call cognitive biases. And I'm not going to get super technical, but I think there's over hundreds or thousands of these cognitive biases that can affect our perspective. And there's two perspectives, in my opinion. There's this perspective of a coach, and then there's that perspective of a player. And I think it's important as coaches, we try to get into the player's perspective, and we try to understand so many different contributing factors that are going into why said player might think or act or do a certain thing, when we're playing, and even not even just when we're playing, but off the field, how they communicate with people. So I picked out 5 cognitive biases that I feel like have applied to me, and certainly probably apply to other coaches out there. And we're going to go over the 5 before we move on to the next character trait. But the first one is negative biases. And we all have this. You think about, even in a facility standpoint, when we're doing individual lessons, at a professional standpoint, when we're talking about evaluating certain players and if they're going to be able to move up, if they're not, if they will be a contributor at the big league, an impact player. So a lot of times we gravitate towards the negativity. This player can't hit a fastball above 95. Oh, he can't hit off speed. He can't do this. He can't do that. He moves this way. He should move that way. And I think we, in that, move away from the positive side. And we forget about what players do really well, and we don't harp on that. And I think it's important that we still point out the negative sides, but we also really gravitate towards the positive as well, because that'll help our players enjoy things a little bit more. So Danny, I know you've run a lot of travel ball tryouts and you certainly do a ton of pitching lessons. So what are your thoughts on the negative biases?
Well, I mean, I think first off, when you're going towards perspective, it made me think of not only we try to get the player's perspective, but a lot of times looking back in my career, I understand so much more of what went down now that I can see the coach's perspective. Like, you know what, coach, I probably wouldn't have put me into that spot either. So I think it kind of you talk about wisdom, and it's the wisdom does take time and come with experience, along with that knowledge that you've learned. But that's where, as you get further away from your career, you could be more bitter. But if you're a level-headed person, a lot of times you understand the reason why coaches made those decisions. But regarding the negative biases, so personally, regarding to me, I never really developed a plus third pitch. I had a very good fastball and changeup combo, but it got in my head by the end of my sophomore year. I just can't spin a breaking ball. And so you're not ever going to recognize the good ones that you flip up there because you're so focused on just the cement mixers that are going to get pounded. And I definitely wish I would have changed my negative bias towards my own arsenal. And then there are always those players from a coach's perspective. We had a really good player in our program who now is a freshman at the Citadel. So serving our country. I'm not exactly sure the demands that he has at the Citadel, but I know it's long days. And he was not a workout warrior, but this dude had a knack for the big moment. He was a catcher. He was a groundhog, block everything, just always called the right play for the right situation. Great caller of pitches, clutch hitting, even though his swing was hideous. We just think so much about what's unattractive to a potential recruiter that we totally miss out on. This guy does so many little things well. He is such a student of the game. It's not fair to him that he wasn't graced with quick twitch fibers all through his body. I mean, and then in the team level, I had a really strong group of 2020s that I had for 4+ years. And man, we could beat the Yankees. We could beat anybody. They felt my confidence. They had confidence. They were a really good ball club. We ended up out of 12 players putting, I think, 7 to Division I schools, another one a JUCO and a D2. So a lot of talent there. But then all of a sudden, after going 1-6 at the World Wood Bat in Georgia, we suck. We can't hit. We can't pitch. We can't field. And it's like these guys have given me 3 to 4 years of high effort, just intensity, competitiveness. And I let that all go down the drain because I selfishly didn't get the result that I wanted for the kids. So their recruiting process was easier, but that was not the time to knock them down because they didn't deserve that in that moment. So I think it's from facility, personal playing career, coaching perspective. I think that's definitely a super, super important one to be conscious of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of being overconfident going into that tournament. And that is another negative, or that is another cognitive biases in terms of the way we view things and our perspective toward things. And I think overconfidence is exactly what it is. We go into situations and we think that we have it all figured out. And a lot of times we don't. And I think it doesn't allow you to have attention to detail. And if we're overconfident in certain situations without fully preparing and having attention to detail, then it can hinder our viewpoint and our perspective on how we view the situation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think humility is just, it's super important to be humble as a coach, but we would all be lying, any players that had some success in their careers, if they don't admit that they have a little cocky side. That's fine to wear internally, but outwardly, nobody really enjoys watching those guys go about their business. It's funny. We're pretty young. I mean, I'm 29. What are you, 32?
33.
Oh, yeah, 33. But I still consider myself old school in terms of some of the showboating and stuff like that. So it's something where if you lack confidence, you're not going to be any good. But if you're so overconfident and think you have it all figured out, I mean, look at hitting Twitter. So many people are so closed off and they think that they have the, what is it, HLP, high level pattern? If you have that HLP just patented, like, why take any information from anyone else? Why look at what a biomechanical device to break down how your body moves in space? like a K-Vest, like that can't be right. I got the HLP. So you could miss out on so much knowledge and so many different stories, perspectives, ideas if you're so stuck in your ways and you can't embrace some humility, because we don't have it figured out. But combined as a baseball community, I'm sure that we could put together some really, really good ideas to improve individually, which helps our players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when Danny's explaining all this, because he's actually, throwing in certain other biases that you can couple as well. And what I just heard is a lot of the bandwagon effect. And you get into a situation, or you're doing some research online, or you're talking to certain coaches, and you see that they've created this system and it's worked for an Aaron Judge, or it's worked for a Josh Donaldson, or Hunter Pence, whatever it is, and we think that we have the fix, and that is going to save all of our players. And that's jumping on the bandwagon and not really being intellectually curious in the root of those changes, and trying to understand the exact environment that was taking place through that. And that can certainly hinder our ability to reason and really connect with our players. But that's from the coaching side. I think, Danny, do you have anything from a bandwagon effect from the player side?
I mean, I think obviously, I think in the hitting department, there are definitely those guys that when they're going good, they may be a little more chirpy in the locker room. They may share their insight a little bit better when they were just digging for advice the week before. But also as a team, I've been part of some pretty good teams. And the better ones that I played with, especially my last 2 years at State, there really wasn't it wasn't a roller coaster ride. It was just business-like. It was show up. Did we expect to win every game? Yeah, we did. And we won a whole lot more than we lost, but we didn't. If we lost a midweek game to UNCW, which I don't think we did, no offense, Seahawks, but okay, we play again in 2 days. It was never going to end our season or send us down this just snowball effect type losing streak. I think the good teams I've been on, you really can't sense that at all. The bad teams, definitely, okay, yeah, we lost Friday, but we won Saturday and Sunday in a conference weekend. Like, no one's beating us the rest of the year. Like, yes, ride that wave for a minute and enjoy it. But at the same time, we know the game of baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you just go have that confidence based off a successful outing weekend at bat, then your valleys are going to be even lower than your peaks. Absolutely.
And another one is confirmation biases. And, you can kind of start to tell how these are all kind of intermingled together. But confirmation biases is basically, Danny said this, that must be right. And I don't need to do any more research, or think about the technology and certain things that have come out, be it the K-Vest, the Blast, all this stuff. And you've got these old school, and I hate the difference between old school and new school, but you've got a lot of coaches that haven't grown up with the tech, and they're fantastic coaches. Don't get me wrong. However, when you're presented a K-Vest data or a reading, and it's, the pelvic angles graph, and it's, about a counter rotation of the hip, and, when they fire, and then the coach who has confirmation bias says, oh, that's just telling me something I already know. Instead of looking at it in a way that, hey, this player, I might be able to get to him by showing him something like this, or I might be able to pull one or two things that might help me develop a player down the road. You kind of go into it with this, oh, I know it all, and I don't need to really dive into this technology, because all it is confirming the stuff I already know. Mm-hmm. And that to me is not, a good personality of a coach. And we're all guilty of it. When someone has conversation or they present us a tech and like, oh yeah, I already knew that. When really you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, all right, well, what is this? Help me understand it a little bit more. And then I can, if I do confirm that did tell me everything I've already taught, that's great. But can I pull one or two more thoughts, ideas from that to help me in the future connect with certain players? And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I do. I'm definitely guilty of it, especially when we first got our HitTrax machines a few years back. It was like, whatever message I was trying to get across to my client, I could pull a report from there that's going to make me look super smart. Whether it's point of impact or whatever it may be. Yeah, you're not hitting the inside pitch well, you're catching it too deep, or you're like, you can only make hard contact out front. I mean, you could twist those numbers around as much as you want, but so we're guilty of it. And sometimes the kid just needs confidence. He needs to leave with a smile on his face. And so whether it's like helping a kid make his middle school team or go from rec to travel ball, it doesn't always have to be from late round pick to first round pick. But I think overall, we need to try to have a good understanding of whatever tech we're using, whatever strategies we're using, and admit when, okay, well, normally this would relate to this, but in this case, you're an enigma. You're a rare case. Like, we need to be okay with that sometimes. And I know I struggle with it personally.
Absolutely. So the next one is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you have some time and you're taking notes, write down DK effect or Dunning-Kruger effect and go look it up. But basically, it talks about confidence and wisdom. And through our years of coaching, we go through certain levels. At least they've said that, successful coaches do this. And the first one is really the peak of Mr. Stupid. And really, that's like, I know I was there when I got done playing. I jumped into the facility and I'm training all these guys, and I'm like, man, I got the answer. I felt really good in the latter half of my career. I had it figured out, and everybody needs to know this information. And they're wrong if they don't hit the way I do, because I know it works. And it's great to be passionate about that, but it's also important to realize that what worked for you in your career will not, and potentially may not, work for other players, especially in different times. So we get into this peak of Mr. Stupid because once we start researching and trying to understand and looking ourselves in the mirror, we really realize that we don't know anything and we're really stupid. And then you fall into the valley of despair and you're like, man, I don't know anything what's going on. And if you're a coach that has never had this, I would say that you're not putting yourself out there to research. Because I can tell you right now, I have this happen all the time where I feel like I don't know anything about hitting, and I don't know anything about the game of baseball because I've been presented or I've been researching a certain topic. And then as you kind of go through that and you navigate your ways, you get to the slope of enlightenment. And really what this is over time you get there. And if you continue to push the envelope and be a lifelong learner, you can start to gain some wisdom. And to me, wisdom is knowledge and experience. So you can continue to seek more information, become more knowledgeable on certain topics. However, it takes experience to gain that true wisdom. So for me, I think it's important that I continue and we all continue to ask coaches that have been around the game for such a long time and connect with them and pick their brains about situations and certain things that they have done in the past. Not to say that you need to agree, but just try to understand a little bit more, because they have so much experience through the years that they've coached. And if you find someone that has coached for a long time and still admits that they don't have it all figured out, you found a good one and someone that you can really pick their minds.
No doubt. And I think for me, like, my coaching career has been that curve that you just talked about. I came in, didn't know a damn thing of what I was talking about. So we were as good at controlling the running game, our systems with runners on base, anything regarding pitching, we were locked down. But I just avoided so many of the things that I wasn't confident in, especially being a PO and coming off your playing career. You stick to what you know and love, but and then you start to figure out. I have one little hitting chalk talk with K-Dub, and I think I'm the hitting guru, and I think I got it all figured out. And then you find out that there is a more efficient way, and Kyle continues to learn more information, and I pick his brain. It's like Kyle said, a constant learner, somebody always seeking out information is healthy. And then in like 4-day micro version of that, we're going to ABCA, excited. You see the first presentation, go, okay, I don't know anything. After you get the swing of it, after the weekend, you have all your good notes. I am the king of baseball. I got it all figured out. I'm not talking to any coaches unless he is on a major league staff. because I know everything. And then try to implement some of the drills, and you see some more new stuff. Then you're like, okay, yeah, I know nothing again. It's funny just seeing in one weekend a coaches conference how the conference levels personally, but then for other coaches, I'm sure they feel the same way. Is kind of a roller coaster.
I think that's funny. The ABCA, American Baseball Coaches Association convention, is exactly all of those peaks and valleys. You walk into it, like you said, confident, and you leave there like, holy cow, I don't know anything. And then you start experiencing it, and you just hit all the points. And that's why I think attending those conferences are so crucial to coaching development. And if you haven't, I certainly would get on that, because there's so many people to connect with and learn from throughout that 4-day event, wherever it's hosted at. So the next one is patience. And I think it's important that we have good patience with our players, and we don't be that Mr. Ego, pump our chest, try to push our ideologies and agendas on our players. We first get to know who they are as humans. Then we start to understand who they are as baseball players, and collectively through both of those, we start to form our opinions on them. But we're patient in that process, and we're patient with their ability to learn certain information, because we learn all at different rates. And whether you're working with 5-year-olds or you're working with 25-year-olds or 35-year-olds, everybody has their own way of learning and taking in information. So I think it's important that we're patient through that process.
Yeah, and I think you have to be patient with your fellow coaches on your staff. You have to be patient with you can't expect them to have the same deep level of understanding of a concept that they may have a full-time other job and they're volunteering their time out there to help you as an assistant, but also in the development process. Like I think about a 2020 grad pitcher that I've been lucky to work with the past several years. He ended up committing to App State, two-way player, but this kid always had the body, the big arm. He just looked the part getting off the bus. And early on, it's like, okay, an inning and 2/3, 47 pitches, 4 walks, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts, just those goofy lines. And it's like, some of the Monday morning quarterbacks are like, yeah, well, I mean, maybe you try to relieve him in a up big, down big situation, or maybe you just throw him against a weaker squad and pool player, this or that. It's like, no, this kid has a future. I told him if he's making changes, he needs to trust me. Same thing with the young switch hitter I had. Like, no, we're not going up righty if it's a big moment in the game. I trust you. I will be patient with your failures now because it will pay off down the road. So, and the kid who's going to App State, he figured it out, but it was through being thrown into the fire and knowing that he could make mistakes, and it was okay because it was a long-term thought process. And I think having patience in your players' development is huge. Having patience with your coworkers. I mean, it's just a pretty crucial character trait in life.
Absolutely. Then the next one is trust, and it goes kind of hand in hand with patience. And in that, the more you're patient, the more you're going to have the ability to establish trust with your players. But having trust is so crucial between staff members and between your players. And at the end of the day, if your players do not trust you, then good luck getting them to do what you feel is important for them. And it's going to be a rough path. And I will say that there's that famous quote that says the student shows up, or the teacher shows up when the student's ready. And I think that has to do with patience and trust. And if you're patient, that student will eventually show up. And if you establish trust with him, and you don't pump your chest and have this huge ego, then he will eventually show up and come to you because he does trust you. And that's where you have the opportunity to really unleash, a lot of the things that you've been watching and trying to understand and continuing to collect information through that process. And trust to me is so crucial when it comes to player development. It might be the most important thing in how well you can establish trust within your players.
And for a facility like TPA that I run the baseball program, the trust goes at all levels. Again, your coworkers, your players, but even more so the parents. And to establish the trust with the parents, you do have to be that role model. You do have to be above board. And so I didn't try as hard as I should have in high school, probably, but I ended up with a pretty good GPA. And I think that buys me a little gravitas with the parents right away. And so all of a sudden I'm an academic coordinator, and I'm getting asked by parents to, hey, he's really slacking off in this class. Can you talk to him? I appreciate that, because that tells me they trust me. And when I first started a season with the team, a lot of times the parents stay there, watch, record, take notes, whatever they want to do. And then towards the end of the season, they drop their kids and go do whatever the hell they want to do. And I appreciate that trust. But even with your players more so, you got to know your players. And if they know that you care about them as a person, and it's a two-way street, my players ask me questions, and I love it. And if I go out and say, hey, are you good, to the pitcher on the mound, and he says, I got it, I know which guys by that point in the year, hopefully, are right. And if it's a 3-0 green light, big situation, same thing. Hey, you like it, go get it. Or if it's a no doubt bunt situation, but he's really seeing the ball well, it's a mound visit, and I have a chance to talk with the hitter, like, I trust you. Play the game. Do what you think you need to do. Same kid, a shortstop. Okay, we got bases loaded, 1 out. You want to go double play depth up the middle, halfway? You want to go infield in? We're going to turn it, coach. I got it. And because he knows the pitcher on the mound, he knows he gets capped weak ground balls. We have a chance to turn something. I just think when you can build a team, a program to that level of trust, it was super gratifying for me. And I think it made us a better team and made our players, they're going to be more prepared for that next level when they show up.
Absolutely. So the last one is communication. And this kind of wraps everything up. Being an effective communicator is so crucial. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we always explain the what. I want you to do this. You need to do this, instead of explaining the why behind the what. And I think that goes not only in communicating with our players, but communicating with our staff too. And being the person on the receiving end, the ability and the comfortability and the safety to ask questions. Hey, coach, why are we doing this? Hey, Mr. Manager, or whoever, why are we doing this certain drill? Why is this situation more important than that situation? And having the freedom to do that and the safety to ask those questions and creating that culture amongst your staff and amongst your players, to me, is so crucial. You have to be effective communicators in what you're doing. And that goes with explaining the why behind the what that we often do not do or we forget about. And then there's some more too. And what is a big thing for communication with you, Danny?
Everyone has their different styles of communicating. I need to get better via email and stuff like that for sure. But like with my team in particular, I was very transparent, more so than most people. Like, I was open about the rotation. I'd ask you, hey, would you rather, like, I know you're working in the bullpen. Like, are you comfortable in the big spot or just up big, down big? But even little situations like with your assistant coach, hey, make sure you let Johnny know he needs to be hot, ready to roll for the 5th. Depending on how this next inning goes for Jimmy, if one guy gets on, Johnny's in. And you look down there, he's getting a snack from mom in the stands, and nobody's hot, and then I'm pissed off, understandably so. But I probably didn't do my job communicating the gravity of the situation. My assistant coach could just be volunteering his time on the weekends after working a full-time job, whatever the case may be. There are layers to it. You need to let the player know directly, the bullpen catcher, the guy down there, that remind the coach again. And nonverbal communication helps too out on a baseball field if you're in the other coach's box. But it is the most crucial aspect of being on the same page on the baseball field, which is going to be a good look to recruiters, the fans, but it's also going to make the playing process more fun and coaching as well.
Yeah, I think over communicating is the side that you want to err on.
As players.
Yeah, and coaches as well. And I think with players, a lot of times we might have defensive replacements at the end of the game, or we might have a pinch hitter, and that person or player that is getting pinch hit for is left to try to guess why he's being pinch hit in certain situations. So I think if we as coaches can grab that player the next day before and have a communication or a conversation about, hey, this is why, this is what into it. I could tell you were frustrated. Explain to me, and give him the freedom to explain why he might be frustrated. And I think it's important with communication skills to be a good listener in that moment and take in his perspective and his feelings and his thoughts. I'm not saying you have to agree, but at least listen and communicate with that player about, the why behind the what. That's what it boils down to. So I think it's really, really important. We could probably talk about communication for hours, but if you just boil it down to explain the why behind the what and become a good listener, I think you will be on your way to becoming a better coach. And certainly things that I want to continue to get better at. And I think we can all continue to get better at.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think just listening in general, you absorb everything going on around you. It helps with people skills beyond just like skills in baseball. You gain more self-awareness, feel for situations. That stuff is so important. You can read kind of the room a little bit better when you do things like that. And also it empowers the players. When they feel heard, they're going to be more willing to come to you with something that you probably need to know as a coach. The last thing I would want is an environment where it's like, oh, I hope coach doesn't find out or hear this or that my back's sore, nobody tell him. Like, that's stuff that I need to know as a coach. Your teammates deserve me knowing so I can adjust the lineup accordingly. I think being a good listener goes far beyond baseball, but that was like all these do, right? Like, these are 5 effective ways to becoming a better person. And that just falls into our why. This is why we do what we do. And this is what we think is important in what we do. So for our first episode, I thought it was important to kind of set the ground rules or guidelines for what we do. But you guys can expect a lot more of this. It's not going to be us preaching our philosophies. We really want to reach out to the best in the game, be it hitting coach, managers, but more importantly, dive into some of the other aspects, the sport performance side, the mental conditioning side, the players side, get to understand their perspectives and figure out at the end of the day what these great leaders in their certain professions or their crafts do really, really well to be at the level that they're at. And you're going to hear learning happening in real time. Danny is fantastic with asking good questions. We will certainly ask the tough questions. They will not be the basic, how did you get here and why are you so good? It'll be diving into how did you handle adversity? How did you get to where you're at? And really the nuts and bolts of why these coaches are so successful in the programs that they run or lead or work for. So we're excited about it. We can't wait to continue with this process and continue to line up some guests. And we hope you guys enjoy this ride and come along with us. Yeah, I'm really excited. Some of the guests that we think we have lined up. And so I'm glad Kyle has a deep Rolodex. And between the two of us, I think we're going to, like he said, the pitching world, infield defense, catching, sports performance, mental skills. I'm so excited to just gain deeper knowledge and share that knowledge with all you guys listening over, hopefully the next several years.
Absolutely. So thanks again for listening, guys, and we'll see you guys next time.
Later.